Hello and welcome to today's KDP University at Home with Amy Daws. My name is Trisha and I'll be your host for today's event. I've been part of the KDP University team for the past few years, and you can often hear me on several of our videos and on our weekly live Wednesday webinars. But enough about me, we're all here to talk to Amy. Amy Daws is an Amazon top 25. I think she corrected me and said top 15. We'll have to clear that up with her. Best-selling author of sexy contemporary romance novels. She enjoys writing love stories that take place in America, as well as across the pond in England, especially those footy-playing Harris brothers of hers. When Amy's not writing in a tire shop waiting room, she's watching Gilmore Girls or singing karaoke in the living room with her daughter while daddy smiles awkwardly from a distance. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you for joining us. This is awesome.
It's always so weird to hear your bio read out loud. And you're like, oh, I should change that someday. But yeah, no, it's awkward.
Need to do a few updates. I know that feeling. Everybody reaches out and they're like, "Oh, do you have this bio for this presentation?" I'm like, "Really? Do I really have to I know, no. Well, I love the fact that you talk about you're a Gilmore Girls fan. I know that my daughter and I love that. We totally binge watch that on a regular basis. So
Oh,
I was wondering, uh-huh,
I've been a lifer of Gilmore Girls. Like I watched it on like the CW like from day one. And it's amazing how many readers I connect with because I put that in my bio. They're like,
right.
wait. And my daughter's name is Lorelai. So that shows you how extreme of a fan I am. I wanted her middle name to be Gilmore, but my husband said no.
I wonder why. That makes no sense.
I know, right?
Have you watched the writer's new series, The Marvelous Miss Maisel?
Oh gosh, yes. I binge that every time it comes out. Like I
Hmm.
can't do anything until I finish. And I have also watched Bunheads, which is the same writers as Gilmore Girls and Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which is really, really good.
I'm gonna have to check that one out. I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today. It's really so much fun to be able to talk to authors and hear about their journey, and then hear about some of the best practices that they have. So let's start out with just a little bit of background. When did you decide that you wanted to be an author?
I don't know. It sort of came to me. I'd always liked writing. Like writing was really easy for me, even when I was growing up. And as a student, like the writing assignments were always way easier than any kind of math or science stuff. And so like I've always enjoyed it, but I didn't think I could actually write a book until I had a true story to tell.
Mhm.
My first book is a memoir called Chasing Hope, and it's about my journey through recurrent pregnancy loss. My daughter Lorelai is a little bit of a miracle baby. We lost 5 babies before we had her.
Mhm.
And I remember kind of journaling some of my miscarriages, and I would be writing the dialogue my husband and I would have because I always remember thinking I was going to have a happily ever after. I was going to have it. I did, but I didn't want to forget the bad stuff because the bad got me to the good.
Right.
And
Right.
so after my daughter was born, I was kind of looking through all these little journals and I'm like, gosh, I feel like I could make this into a book. And the ending could be the birth of my daughter and it could
Mhm.
just be amazing. And so yeah, I mean that was kind of what gave me the itch to write and made me realize I could write. And obviously fiction would be a bit more fun. So it
Right.
kind of blew up after that.
Great. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's such, I think more of us have experiences like that, and it's just not talked about frequently. So being able to share that story, I think, is probably something that's very empowering for a lot of women and is really helpful. So
Yeah. It's
personally, I thank you for sharing that experience.
Yeah, and it's really connected me in a personal way to some readers. It's always so special when I'm at a signing and I
Hmm.
find a reader who connected to Chasing Hope more than my fiction books, which are what everybody knows me for.
Right.
I don't know, it's just a special moment, and yeah, I'm glad I wrote that book.
Well, good. Good. So so we just talked about the fact that you started with a memoir and then moved to fiction, but primarily what kind of fiction?
Steamy romance. Yeah, like so when after I wrote Chasing Hope, I was like, man, I love romance. I've been a romance reader since the moment my sister handed me some British chick lit book. It was called Asking for Trouble, and it
Uh-huh.
was what the movie The Wedding Date was based on. And I was like, I read that book and I was like, oh my gosh, it's even better than the movie, which I already loved. So
Uh-huh.
that started my love of romance. And so after I wrote Chasing Hope, I was like, man, I wonder if I could write a romance novel. And even my early books have a lot of infertility storylines in them,
Mhm.
at least my first one that I wrote, A Broken Us, and then I later wrote a prequel. But anyways, because you kind of write what you know until you
Mhm.
find your footing. At least that's how it worked for me. And I thought if I could publish a memoir and get that out there, why couldn't I publish a romance novel? So
Mhm.
now I have like 16 romance novels. So clearly I found what my passion is.
Right, right. So you talked a little bit about writing what you know. Do you still find that you put a lot of your regular daily life into those novels, or is that kind of
Oh
changed?
yeah. No, totally. I give a piece of myself, I swear, to all my characters. And the readers that follow me on social media and know my personality, they can see that in the books, which I think they love too. They laugh about it. Like my last heroine that I wrote in my doctor romance called One Moment Please. The
Mhm.
heroine loves making charcuterie boards. And if you follow me on Instagram, I'm always making charcuterie boards. And so she's all pregnant and making charcuterie boards, and it's so fun. And it's just kind of fun to put a piece of myself in there.
It's amazing. In our office, the word charcuterie is just what we say when we need a pick-me-up. We just
Oh,
like yell out charcuterie. It's just love that word. Love that word.
I mean, charcuterie makes me happy too, so I get it.
So, talking about your characters, I think that it's really interesting to find out which character authors relate to best from their book or which one they like best from their book. Which character would it be for you?
It's a hard question because I love them both for different reasons. I mean,
Mhm.
my book, Wait With Me, Kate, and I think we'll talk about this later, but she's based so much on me because she's a romance novelist who sneaks into a tire shop to write, which has its whole own backstory. And so I gave a lot of my humor to her. So she was so easy to write. It was like breathing. Her inner narrative is a lot like mine, which tells my readers a lot about me. But one of my favorite characters I've ever written and that my readers love the most is Vi Harris. She is one of the sisters of these four British soccer players, and she's like this mama bear, overprotective, expects a lot of her brothers. She's like the matriarch of their family because their mother died when they were very young, and
Mhm.
I love her too because she was a secondary character, and I was just going to give her four brothers who all play professional soccer because I thought that sounded cool. I never expected to write a whole series about them. And then as soon as I published her book, my readers were like, when are we getting these Harris brothers? And I was like, oh, I didn't even think I could write sports romance, but maybe I could try it. And so, like, I owe so much of my career to her because really the Harris brothers is when my career really took off.
Okay. So you just mentioned the fact that, you didn't think about writing a series and then your readers kind of pushed you to do that. Are you finding that that's how your series evolve or start out? Or do you
Yeah.
plan it?
Yeah, I definitely always hear what my readers say after a release. And typically they love my secondary characters. So
Mhm.
I don't always plan to make, like, gosh, I have this guy named Max in my book, One Moment Please, who I didn't really even give much page time to, but my
Mhm.
readers are begging for Max's story. And I'm like, really? Okay, well, let's think about Max. And and I don't know, I like to give the people what they want, and
Right.
I love living in the same world for a while, and you can give updates on couples and where they're at a year later with the new story. And
Mhm.
so yeah, I definitely listen to readers, but I really do fall in love with my secondaries for the most part. So I almost always know I'm going to spin off with a secondary.
Uh-huh. Okay. Um, Now you are a self-published writer.
Yes.
Um, let's talk about that for just a little bit. What would, if you had to pick like one thing that you wish people understood about writing or self-publishing, what would it be?
I think, well, first of all, I think the biggest thing that's sort of confusing that I've noticed is I think people think if you're self-published, it's like a consolation choice. like it's not your first choice. Most people think, well, you didn't get published by a big five publisher. You must have not got accepted, right? And
Uh-huh.
it's so not like that. I mean, indie publishing and self-publishing, same thing, are so empowering because literally you have all the power. You get to pick your release dates, you get to set your own schedules, you get to decide when to run a sale and how to market and how to make your cover and what kind of branding you want as an author. And it's just such a cool business and it truly makes you an entrepreneur, not just a writer.
Hmm.
And I think if you're someone who has that hunger to be an entrepreneur and to have a hand in all the things and not just the craft and the writing,
Hmm.
self-publishing is such a great choice, and it's a successful choice for many people. You have to work hard, and it doesn't happen for everybody, but self-publishing doesn't mean I'm making less money than a traditionally published author. Like
Hmm.
that's not true at all.
Do you find that when you started versus now that there's been a shift in understanding self-publishing or indie publishing, that it's more widely accepted nowadays than it was like just even 3, 4 years ago?
Oh yes, for sure. I mean, it's just become such the standard now, I think, for most people. And I don't even think people are querying agents and traditional publishers like they used to. I think people know more about it and there's more exposure to it and more success. You see other authors self-publishing with success and it gives newer authors hope that they can do it too. So,
Mhm.
yeah, it's definitely more widely known.
So if you can sum up kind of your experience of becoming a self-published author in just a few sentences, how would you tell that story?
Oh gosh. If I could, will you repeat that one more time? I want to
Sure,
make sure I
sure.
got it right.
That's okay. If you were to sum up your experience of becoming a self-published author in like a few sentences, kind of how would you tell that story?
I mean, in the beginning, it's kind of scary and it's overwhelming, and you think you're never gonna succeed and it's too much. But honestly, it's such a rewarding experience when you do succeed, or even when you just get that first paperback in your hand,
Mhm.
and you get to hold your finished product, whether you sold 10 copies or 10,000 copies.
Mhm.
It's such a journey in finding yourself and feeling accomplished. And so it's scary in the beginning, but it's so worth it.
So once you did you start publishing solely through indie? You did the research and said, "Hey, nope, I'm just going to go straight with indie."
I did query agents for my memoir in the beginning
Mhm.
because I didn't know any different.
Right.
And then I'd found a local author friend who was kind of publishing some fantasy novels, and we had coffee, and she told me all about self-publishing, and
Mhm.
I even remember having some of the same like preconceived notions of it too.
Right.
And but eventually, you don't want to wait for someone to pick you up. You want your story out there. You worked hard. It's ready to go. Like, I don't want to be at the mercy of someone else's choice. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I did definitely query, but eventually I did self-publishing. And once I went to romance, I never considered traditional.
So did you start out as a full-time writer or did you kind of balance a job and writing at the same time?
Oh no, I definitely balanced a job. It does not make a lot in the beginning. I mean, I don't know. There's lucky people whose first books break out and they're good for them, but like I wasn't one of them. So I had a day job and I had a daughter, a young little daughter and a husband, and I was like writing till 2 or 3 in the morning a lot. And it's a lot of work, but in some ways I think I was almost more productive back then than I am now that I'm doing it full time writing. But yeah, so I had a day job. I did TV commercials for a local television station,
Okay.
and I loved that job. It was a great job, but writing was more exciting for me. And so
Uh-huh.
eventually, once I started gaining some momentum, and one of my books made more in 1 month than I made in a year at that job, I thought, okay, maybe I should consider doing this full time. But I had
Uh-huh.
these benchmarks in my head, like once I had X amount in the bank, then I'd feel safe to quit because
Hmm.
I needed a safety net, because what
Right.
if the next book doesn't do well and you want to be sure you're covered
Hmm.
for a while so you don't have to go back to work after 2 months.
Yeah. So it's not just a one-time situation. It's
Yeah,
sustainable.
exactly.
Now, um, can you talk a little bit about when you started hitting the charts? You know,
Yeah. Yeah, gosh, so I used to be published wide and I did okay there. I had some good traction at Apple Books. But
mhm,
then, I had a good author friend, Stacy Hart, kind of like coach me into how Kindle Unlimited was working for her. And so I started using some of her practices
mhm,
with my Harris Brothers series. And it was so cool because every book I released in my series kept doing better and better. And book two hit the top 100. And that was like a pie in the sky goal that I didn't think I could achieve. And it was like it happened on the second book. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like real money,
right.
And then the third book hit the top 50. And then another book of mine hit the top 25. And then my most recent release hit number 13. And it is just, I don't know, it's so like rewarding and exciting. And it's like you put so much time and effort into not only your story, but your marketing and your branding and your imaging. And you want everybody to know exactly what they're getting with this book. So it's an easy decision for them to buy it. And
Mhm,
so it just feels like a group effort then, like the readers are part of this success. And a lot of authors, myself included, we like to share those ranks in social media
right.
when it happens so everybody can kind of ride that excited wave with us because it really is like I wouldn't be able to do that without all those readers. So it truly is, their win as much as it is mine.
Can you talk to me a little bit? You mentioned that you had another author friend who kind of gave you some best practices. Can you share
Yeah.
some of those best practices?
Yeah, I mean, they've changed. The thing is,
Mhm,
like so many things change. And as your career grows, you have to adapt as well. But like one thing I did back in the day, and this was probably at least 3 years ago, was I did 99 cents for 4 days on a pre-order. And then on release day, I would change my price.
mhm,
And that's kind of how I branded my Harris Brothers series for the first three books. By then, I kind of developed a following. And then I think you kind of train your readers into buying in KU if you want to raise your price up a little bit. And I mean,
mhm.
raising your price is basically to 3.99 cents to 3.99. So really it's cheaper than a Starbucks, Um, and you kind of develop your following and you get people hooked on the series. And then you can slowly start to say, okay, now I think I'm worth this. So I
Mhm,
hope you come with me, and it takes a while. But the beauty of Kindle Unlimited is if they don't want to pay $4 for your book, they can read it in Kindle Unlimited with a subscription. So,
mhm,
it's the great option for readers. And so yeah, those were and really covers.
mhm.
Stacey Hart really helped me with my covers, and I put my first abs on a cover because it was a soccer star, and abs sell, man. I think some readers get tired of seeing all those man chests and abs, but man, they really sell. And for sports romance, it's a good pairing.
Right.
So I really love my branding for my Harris Brothers series.
Nice. Um, we asked the audience, or we asked all of the attendees to submit some questions during the registration process, and they asked a lot of great questions. And I think there's a couple of them that kind of fit here. So I'll take a second to address some of those.
Yeah.
They wanted to know, how long does it take to write each book?
Um, I think every author has their own process. Some authors are
Mhm,
very diligent and they want to write 2,000 words a day or 5,000 words a day. I know for myself, I'm a feast and famine writer. I'm either not writing any words or I'm writing 12,000 a day. And not every
wow.
day. Like I'll write 12,000 words one day and I'm burnt for 2 days after.
Right.
Um, but I just know myself now that if I'm in one of those 12,000 word days, I do not let myself stop because that's a flow that should not be interrupted. Even my husband knows to just close shop, like don't let anyone in, let her go.
Right.
So I say roughly between 4 to 6 weeks, but I've
Okay.
written a book in 13 days before too. And
That's
I wish I
amazing.
could, I wish I could do that with every book. And I always talk to my author friends. I'm like, what did I do with this book? How did I get it done in 13 days? And how do I replicate that? And it's just one of those things you can't plan on. So for me though, usually if I try to focus, I can get it done in 6 weeks.
Do you outline your stories before? Are
Uh,
you I think a pantser or plotter?
I'm I'm a little bit of both. I'm a
Okay.
pantser for the most part, but I usually have an idea of like what trope, like, okay, this
Hmm.
is going to be a doctor romance and she's going to get pregnant. And so it'll be a surprise pregnancy story. And I might have some big highlight chapters in my mind that I'll want to write.
Uh-huh.
And I might have like my black moment, which is, when everything falls apart, because we have to
Right.
make everybody feel good, then rip them apart so we can put them back together. Yeah, romance is vicious in some ways.
Right.
Um, but yeah, so usually I have a couple big scenes in mind, but for the most part, I'm a pantser.
Okay. Well, it sounds to me like kind of when you were talking about that, is there a pretty set formula that you follow for all of your stories?
Yeah, I mean, pretty much. There's, the meet cute. They got to have like a honeymoon period where they're in
Uh-huh.
love, and then you got to rip them apart and you got to put them back together. I mean, there's lots of different waves within all of those highlights, but yeah, that's kind of a good formula for most romance novels. And readers expect that,
Hmm.
you can feel the bad part coming, but you kind of crave it too because when everything's happy, I'm bored. Like
Right.
even when I'm writing it, I'm like, oh, I got to write the honeymoon period. They're going to be in love. And oh, I don't know why we love to torture ourselves so much, but we do.
I think we like the change and it's more, I don't know, for me, it's more realistic when everything's falling apart because that's
Yes,
kind of more what
exactly.
my life usually ends up being.
Yep.
Um, so when you're writing, you talked about the fact that you wrote one in 13 days, which blows my mind.
Me
But
too.
do you have some tips if somebody's stuck on a scene or a chapter?
You kind of have to figure out how you process things. Like I've learned I'm a verbal processor.
Hmm.
And I have this one friend, I call her my fluffer. We have to talk before I sit down to write a chapter. I'm like, okay, so I think I'm gonna have this happen to him. But like, what are they gonna say in the beginning? And we just kind of start to go back and forth. And sometimes she doesn't even have to reply. I just have to like verbal diarrhea it to someone to get in the mindset. So I really think talking things out to someone or
Uh-huh.
even to yourself could really help you get flowing and get moving or just and sometimes I skip ahead. Like if I'm stuck at the beginning and I can't get it, sometimes I just need to jump ahead and write that scene that's been sitting here forever and let that flow because usually something will trigger while I'm doing that to get me back to the beginning and more inspired.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned that you have a friend that you verbally process with. Have you ever tried verbally processing with your family? Are they like, no, no, go find somebody else to talk to?
Um, my husband's not good at plotting. He's like, he's listened to some of my audiobooks and he loves them. But he when I talk to him about what's wrong with my characters, he's like, he doesn't have any input. My sister-in-law is great. She's a big romance reader, so she's a great person to kind of plot with. And so, you just kind of find those people that you know what you need when you need it. Like, so my sister's a good little brainstormer. My one
Mhm.
friend's a good fluffer. My assistant is great for just kind of keeping me rolling and keeping me on task. And so, you just kind of know what you need and who you can talk to.
Right. Well, you've mentioned so your assistant and then the other people. So would you consider that you kind of have a team, a support team that helps you get through this?
Yes, 100%. And I have great beta readers that read my stuff afterwards or while I'm writing. And, like some of them I feel like have made my writing better, like
Hmm.
100%. I have this friend named Beth in Canada who she started off as a really tough reviewer.
Hmm.
And I would read her really tough reviews on Goodreads and just hate my books and hate myself and be like, oh my gosh, everything she's saying is right. I should have, like, and so
Right.
she was hitting these notes that I could tell were, it wasn't just a scathing mean review. It was like good critical review. And I'm like, I need that critical voice in my head. And so
Right.
I actually started messaging her. I'm like, will you beta read for me? Because I really, really like, how you've helped, like what you've put in your reviews. And now
Mhm.
she reads all my books. I'd feel lost without her because she really does make my books better. So 100% I have a team. I have beta readers, I have proofers, my assistant, my, they're called alpha readers when they're kind of reading as you're writing.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's a big process.
And one of the questions that we get asked frequently is, how do you build that team? So the beta reader you built because she was leaving these amazing reviews. What about everybody else? Kind of how do you find that team, or does it build organically over time?
Mine really did kind of build organically. And I used to have some author friends read for me too.
Mhm.
But that's hard because we're very busy. We're all busy and like we can barely read for enjoyment, let alone trying to read for each other. That was helpful though. I mean, authors have a very different take on feedback because of their ability to write too. So
Mhm.
it really was like relationships I developed over time. Even my assistant, who's been my assistant now for almost 3 years, she started as a beta reader and I really liked her critical voice and she was very direct and I just slowly started letting her help me with things and then
Mhm.
now she helps me. I pay her monthly and she's helps me all the time. I don't know what I do without her too. So,
Oh, good. I'm glad you have somebody like that.
yeah.
I think everybody needs one of those in their life.
Totally. Yes. She lives in Germany though. It's really inconvenient.
Oh,
'Cause all the time when I'm signing books, I'm like, why aren't you here helping me? This remote PA stuff is great in some ways, but not in others, but we
right.
make it work.
Well, good. Now, you recently released a book, One Moment, Please. Can you
Yes.
talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. It was my third book in my Wait With Me series.
Mhm.
It was a surprise pregnancy novel. My Wait With Me series is kind of based on waiting room meet cutes.
Mhm.
And I don't know if you want me to share the tires, tires, tires story. Or are we
Yeah.
getting to that?
No, go ahead. You can share it
Go
here.
for
I
it.
think I love that story.
Because it kind of encompasses everything in that series.
Mhm.
But my book Wait With Me is about a romance novelist who sneaks into a tire shop to write and gets busted by a hot mechanic, and shenanigans take place after that. But that's kind of based on my true story. Right after I quit my day job and decided I was going to be a full-time writer and make a career out of this,
Mhm.
I hit like the worst writer's block ever. And I was one of those people that didn't think writer's block was a real thing. Like
Right.
I was that arrogant. And it's real. I could not write from home. And one day I went into a place called Tires, Tires, Tires for a new set of tires. And I say it like this every time. I'm like, I cracked my laptop open in their beautiful waiting room. Like they have an amazing coffee machine that dispenses lattes, espressos. I said it was like my Luke's Diner for those for those
Yes,
Gilmore fans out there.
Gilmore, there
Um,
definitely.
so yeah, it was delicious coffee and they had like warm complimentary cookies and oh, it was just like I loved the vibe there. And I cracked
Mhm.
my laptop open and I say it's like the skies opened up, the sun shone down. I heard angels chanting and like the words just flowed like crazy. I was like so like inspired. I don't know. And so I just kept going back with other people's cars for oil changes and services and sitting in their waiting room for like 6 hours a day. Yeah, you can't make this stuff up. It was real, but I was desperate. And I
Uh-huh.
said I felt like an athlete who didn't want to change their routine,
Mhm.
so I just kept going back and I snuck in once. Like, I don't know, it was this crazy experience and it blew up because BuzzFeed got a hold of the story and
Right.
they reported about me and they like contacted me for an interview. And then all these mommy blogs picked it up and national um, news stations, like I did TV interviews over the phone. Like it was, I don't know, it's just this wild experience. And the reader community and author community were all along the ride with me, like,
Uh-huh.
because I was posting every day about it. And so it was just such a fun moment in our book world that brings everybody together for something that's so random and so hilarious. And yeah,
Mhm.
I wrote a book about it. It's called Wait With Me. And, it's very similar. A lot of similar things happened to me, but none of the hot and steamy parts, I'm afraid. That did not happen. My husband wouldn't have been cool with that.
I can understand that. So did you ever have that experience where people are side-eyeing you going, why is she back again? Seriously, does she own a million cars?
I know. There was a few people. Well, I mean, the guys that work there for sure, I think, started to wonder why they kept seeing me coming in all the time.
Right.
Or like I'd come in 3 days in a row with different cars, and they're like, "How many cars do you own?" I was
Right.
like, I was tempted to say I started a service where I take people's cars in for them, but I figured less information was more discreet.
Right, right. So I
Yeah.
think I read somewhere that they now allow you to come in whenever you want to write in there.
Oh yeah. Like I'm like friends with them now. Like Gary the manager, like he welcomed when he found out about it, he welcomed me with open arms, gave me all this tires swag. When I go to signings now, he gives me a big bag of tires koozies to pass out, and my readers flip because they just think that's so cool. And yeah, it's this unusual coupling, but it works for us. I really miss it right now with social distancing. I can't wait for this to all be over so I can go back and keep, seeing those
Mhm.
guys every day because they are so sweet.
Right. Well, I'd go back for the coffee alone.
Yes, right? Very good.
So, as a successful author, you have some really great experiences, and we've talked a little about them, but kind of let's get into some of the kind of meat of that. What advice would you give to a new and inspiring indie author who's considering working with KDP?
Um, well, I mean, KDP is great, but it's really just one tool in your toolbox. KDP, just publishing to KDP doesn't give you success. You have to have marketing and branding and a newsletter and all the things that it takes to be successful. So it really is just a really nice tool in your toolbox, but there's a laundry list of other things you need to be doing to try to be successful.
Okay. So, we'll get into some more of those tools in just a minute, but if you had to pick out one thing, one best piece of advice for navigating KDP, what would it be?
One piece of advice for navigating KDP. I guess I'd say keep your eye on what's changing in the industry so that,
Mhm.
when you're publishing and doing things like I said, that 99-cent 4-day deal worked great for me 3 years ago, but now the market's changed, readers' habits have changed. So you
Mhm.
need to be sure you're kind of watching what other authors are doing, seeing what's working for people and adapt with it.
Okay, that's really good advice. And I know that we talked and hit a little bit about, you mentioned KU earlier, Kindle Unlimited or
Mhm.
KDP Select is the author-facing term for that. Are you KU or wide?
I'm KU. I've been all KU for a few years now,
Mhm.
and that's what my readers know me for now. And I'm really happy with it. I found great success with KU.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about why you made that choice?
Yeah, I think, I hit a point in my career where I was ready to level up, and
Mhm.
I felt like I couldn't really figure out a way to get there.
Mhm.
And, like I said, I had an author friend kind of advising me on what she did. And, it wasn't just the clicking KU button that made this successful. It was the fact that I focused on my branding and I changed the look of my covers a little bit. And I wrote a sports romance series, and that was my
Mhm.
first time. It was a little more marketable, I think, more commercial. My London Lovers series, my very first series, was a little bit more emotional and not quite as tropey. So I think
Mhm.
sometimes readers had a hard time knowing what they were going to get, so they just wouldn't buy it. That's
Mhm.
the thing about tropes that's so great is if you tell readers what they're going to get, then they know if they want it or not. But if
Right.
they don't quite know, if it's sort of this muddy blurb that is a lot of things but not one thing clear, then it's hard for them to know. I don't know if I want that, so I'll just forget about it for now. So,
Mhm.
really writing strong to tropes. For me, abs covers worked and sports romance worked, and yeah, I mean that's kind of what's helped me.
I think you hit on a key spot I think that new authors struggle with, and that's not, they're trying to market to everyone, right?
Hmm.
Instead of finding that group of readers that want what you're writing.
Yeah.
Um, so you kind of talk about that a little bit, and I know that new authors often ask the question, how do I find that reader and how do I explain to them what they want? So can you talk a little bit about how you went about kind of finding that core group of readers?
I mean, for me, like social media has become a huge part of my marketing and my brand. I'm an extrovert. I say I have middle child syndrome through and through. I'm like always seeking attention everywhere I go. And so it's social media is fun for me
Uh-huh.
and I use a lot of humor on it. So I think really what helped me was I connected with readers through social media first.
Hmm.
They got to know my personality, my voice, my crazy. And I think that kind of helped them maybe take a chance. And then running sales and things like that to make it even to make that barrier even easier to cross over is like if I have a free book, then they would be even more enticed to try me if they've already kind of seen me around on social media. So
Hmm.
I've really found my social media voice,
Hmm.
and I think that's helped me find readers, bond with readers, and keep them.
Okay. So social media is your thing. Any one or two particular social media platforms that work well for you?
I love Instagram and I love doing Instagram stories. A lot of readers know. Even when I go on retreats, now I'm really well known for Authors in the Wild, it's called. And I'll sit in the corner at these retreats where we're all together and everybody's quietly writing with headphones on.
Uh-huh.
And I'll be like, here's Jessica Hawkins in the wild writing her angsty love stories. And, I kind of just narrate like ridiculous, you know, voices with what my author friends are doing. And luckily, my author friends are good sports,
Right.
and the readers love that little glimpse into what we're doing. And so Instagram stories is definitely my favorite, but I love Facebook too.
Uh-huh. Well, we talk when we talk about branding, we talk about being true to be authentic to yourself because it's much easier to be able to keep up with your marketing and branding if you're being true to who you are. And it sounds like you're doing that really well.
Yeah, and I've told people in my Instagram stories, my voice on social media is often my voice in my books,
Right.
especially as I've gone more into romantic comedies. You get a lot of what you see. So if you kind of connect with me on social media, odds are you'll connect with me in my books.
Good. Um, so talk to me a little bit about marketing a book launch. I think people are always like, they want a formula. Give me a step-by-step process of marketing a book. What does that look like for you?
I mean, the biggest things everybody will tell you, you need to have an amazing cover, an amazing blurb, and an amazing story. You need to make sure all those three things are on point.
Mhm.
I really love an amazing tagline. I don't know why I'm using amazing. It feels good. Um, I love to have a really strong tagline, like my book, One Moment, Please. Visual aid.
There you go.
Um, the tagline I came up for was that awkward moment when your ER doctor has to tell you that you're pregnant with his baby. And so instantly, yeah, like you laugh,
It does. It's
it's
funny.
funny and it's got a doctory cover. And so, it encompasses the main trope and kind of brings readers in. They know they're probably going to laugh. They're going to have
Mhm.
some shocking moments and it's a doctor. And so, that's kind of a big thing I've been trying to push is writing really good taglines for all my
Mhm.
books. And then I also do release blitzes where I get bloggers to post about my new release for the first few days that it's out. I have advanced reader copies go out to bloggers and readers to
Mhm.
get early reviews coming in. So there's a buzz that starts before release. Um, Lots of giveaways in fellow author Facebook groups
Mhm.
and cross promoting with other authors, sharing each other in your newsletter, and also advertising. I do Facebook ads, Amazon ads, and my newsletter is very big. So that's a big part of my marketing plan as well. And
Mhm.
newsletters take a while to build. So those are something that are good to start early because it's time consuming. Yeah, that's kind of a long list, but
No, that's really great. That's really, really great. The newsletter, you talked about that, and a lot of people have questions about how to build their newsletter following and then how often to send. So how did
oh
you
yeah.
find a way, how did you build out that newsletter following?
Yeah, in the beginning, I used some companies that did kind of newsletter giveaways and cross promotions. So there'd maybe be 20 authors that all like put money into a pot for a giveaway, and
Hmm.
everybody posts it everywhere. And then, everybody, that means to enter the giveaway, you have to sign up for the newsletters. So
Hmm.
that's how I did it in the beginning. And then now I've kind of found these author newsletter groupings where, maybe 10 of us authors give away a book of each other every month, and then to get that free book, you have to sign up for my newsletter. So it's kind of this wagon wheel that goes around and round every month, and that lasts for 12 months if you have 12 authors.
Right.
So and there's a lot of crossover, like I might
Mhm.
get people that are already on my list. But it's just like I said, it's kind of a slow process. So you just do everything, say yes to everything.
Mhm.
And if there's not something out there going on, try to find some authors and start your own giveaway. And
Mhm.
it's just what it takes. And try to be creative. Think about audiobook industry, and maybe you're going to give away audiobooks instead. Like
Mhm.
and then you're getting new readers, because there's a lot of audio listeners that aren't readers. They only do audio. So,
Right.
and as far as how often to send out, I'm not real specific. Sometimes I hit them a lot, and I think to myself, if they don't want to hear from me, they don't need to be here, so they can
Mhm.
unsubscribe if it's too much.
Mhm.
So, but then oftentimes I go quiet. But when I'm like releasing a book, they'll hear from me with the pre-order when it's live, a few days later, and then another week about reviews.
Mhm.
Like so. There's probably 4 newsletters for me that'll go out on a release month, and I guess I don't feel bad about that, because, like I said, I want them to want to hear from me. And if they don't, then they can go. And I'm totally okay with that. I
Mhm.
understand boxes kind of get full, but
Right. Right.
yeah. It's also, I'll mention, important to have a voice, I think, in your newsletter.
Mhm.
Um, so you can connect with those readers personally, especially if you're doing cross promo and people are just signing up to get a free book.
Mhm.
Um, you need to connect with them somehow. So make sure your voice is clear in your newsletter so they can have a moment to connect with you personally and
Mhm.
beyond that free book.
Right. And look forward to actually reading the emails as they come out instead of just
Yes,
skimming and saying, "Oh, yep, okay, done."
exactly. Yes.
You talked a little bit about bloggers, and I know that there was a question about how to reach out to those bloggers because the attendee asking the question, they were like, I reach out to them, but nobody responds. So how do you get that kind of conversation going?
It's a good question. It's a hard answer though, because sometimes, I've noticed, I remember days in the beginning, it was hard to get bloggers to care about me too. They didn't know who I was, what I did, like nothing.
Mhm.
So I didn't get a lot of signups either. And as I've grown, so has my blogger list and interest.
Mhm.
I really like using some of those blogger companies that schedule your release blitzes and take care of everything, because they have a master list
Mhm.
that if they're not going to read your book, they will post. So,
Mhm.
and even just posting is something. ARC readers are hard to find when you're just starting out. So, just a matter of getting good visibility out there and having good social proof, I think is really important. So, I'd use some companies if you're struggling, and I'd work on making sure those emails you're sending to bloggers are very personal, but not
Mhm.
too long. you know, address them by name if you can find their name. Tell them a little bit about your book to get them interested. Give them the hook,
Uh-huh.
and then tell them you'd really appreciate it, and just be very grateful and humble. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of bloggers are interested in helping new authors too,
Mhm.
if they really kind of feel that personal effort.
Mhm. But they're busy. Yeah, to your
Yeah,
point, keep
they
the
are.
keep the conversation short. They don't
Yes,
want a synopsis of your book that's as long as your book.
exactly. Exactly.
If you had to pick out a couple tools that a self-published author cannot live without, what are they?
Great cover and a great blurb. I mean, that's the headline of any news article, like
Uh-huh.
is the image and what it's about. And I like to put sort of in that very first line on my blurb the clear trope,
Right.
or my tagline. I've been kind of doing that too, as just like to grab their attention, pull them in, then they read the blurb and hopefully buy the book.
Right. So you've talked about your covers quite a bit and
Mhm.
your branding on the covers. Do you design your own covers?
I do actually.
That's awesome.
My background's in television, so that also had a lot of graphic design with it. So I do all the design work on my covers. I don't do the photography, obviously. But I've kind of found my coloring, my vibrancy and things like that. And so it's sort of now that I've found that look, I kind of keep
Mhm.
it and apply it to everything, which is really nice. Whenever I start a new series, though, it's very stressful because then you got to find a whole new look, you know.
Right.
But I get a lot of eyeballs on my covers too. And you got to find those critical voices too. It's very important. There's lots of people that are super positive and encouraging, and I like to
Mhm.
call them yes people. And I
Yes.
love yes people. Like they make me excited about this job. But I also really value my critical voices, my readers or friends that really will pick apart things for me that I can't see because
Uh-huh.
I'm too close to it. So it's
Right.
important to, get lots of eyeballs on it and get lots of feedback.
Are you able to process that critical feedback immediately, or do you have to take a minute? As sometimes is it like, really, you're saying that about it, and then you have to take a minute to sit with that feedback?
It depends how bad it is, I guess. For the most part, I'm I'm a very pragmatic person. So if you say something reasonable, I can look at it and be like, oh yeah, you're right. I can change that. And
Right.
that's even with my story. When,
Mhm.
one of my tough beta readers points something out, I'm like, oh yeah, you're right. I need to give this more or something.
Mhm. Mhm.
So for me, I'm pragmatic. For a lot of people, and some people don't like too much feedback. It like
Right.
overwhelms them and stresses them out. I'm not one of those. I can process a lot, I guess.
Good. If you had to pick out the most surprising thing about self-publishing when you first started, what was it?
Um, it's incredibly hard. You put in tons of hours, and it feels like sometimes you're never going to be happy,
Mhm.
but yet it still kind of never feels like work. Like, I don't know. It's weird that it's just this job that I love. And even though it's a job that, like, I really never leave, especially because of the
Mhm.
social media aspect, like, I'm working all the time.
Mhm.
If you count social media, which I do. And I make sure my husband knows that's work. Because we have that argument that,
Right.
this is work. It looks like Facebook, but it's work. It's, I don't know, even that, it never feels like work, even when it's late at night and I'm scrolling through notifications or getting back to readers or,
Mhm.
posting marketing things. It still is just this really rewarding, fun job that I feel really lucky to be doing.
I think that's when you figure out you found your calling. If
Yeah.
you're at, at 10 o'clock at night doing something and you're like, no, no, I'm still having fun with it.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And it's not all fun, but even
Right.
like the moments where I'm tortured by my characters and oh, I can't hear their voices and I just want to get this scene done. I don't know, it's like a cool problem.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, like I said, we have a lot of questions that came in, and I
Yeah.
still see that there's more questions coming in. Let's start with, I think, the basic, because we get a lot of aspiring authors who or writers who want to know, where do I start? How do I kick this off? What would you tell them?
Well, get your book done. That's kind of obvious. Get
Mhm.
your book written and get your book read. You need to get some critical eyes on that, especially in your early days. Man, I still cringe when I read my early stuff. And that was beta read too. So,
Mhm.
you really develop your craft as you keep writing. So really write more, write more, write more, and edit and revise and get feedback and things like that.
Mhm. I think there should be a rule that you never go back and read your early stuff, because then you're
Yes,
just like, I want to fix this.
I know. Oh, I would do so much editing on my books.
You talked a lot about the fact that you pull from real life, and your characters have your voice. Do you do research though? And, you know,
Yes,
how do you do that?
absolutely.
Okay.
Um, I knew nothing about soccer when I decided to write a book about four brothers who play professional soccer. Um, and I will venture to say I still don't know a lot about soccer, but I know people that do, and I talk to people that do, and I get help,
Hmm.
and or I research, I read like highlights from a match,
Hmm.
and so I can kind of visualize and see how they describe certain maneuvers in a game and things like that. So, yes, I research a lot, and I write about doctors. Like I don't know much about doctors. Clearly I don't have a medical degree. I will say I've used some of my doctors though, like with pregnancy stuff or infertility, if they have any connection to that in the medical field. I do know a lot about that from my experience with
Hmm.
infertility in my memoir, so that was kind of helpful. But yeah, research is huge.
Hmm. Um, so we have some questions about kind of the practical day-to-day as a writer. Do you have a set time or a set schedule that you work through, or is it just whenever the mood hits you?
I wish I did. I when I'm writing, I'm very focused to the point
Uh-huh.
that I don't see my friends and I don't go out and I'm consumed in that story. I always say there's a certain point I hit in my books where I live more in my fictional world than my real world. And
Hmm.
when I'm forced to go out and see people, it's like my brain is quiet because I'm not really present. So um, it's kind of that feast or famine thing again. So I go so deep into the story when I'm writing that when I'm not writing, I really don't hold myself too accountable. I mean, I do a lot of the business stuff still every single day. I get all that done. But
Hmm.
like, I don't worry if I'm not writing every day because I work hard when I do write. So
Hmm.
I give myself a break and I cut myself some slack. And I like to take breaks between books too. I need to refill that creative cup.
Hmm.
And sometimes that looks like binge watching Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, which
And
it
there's
does.
nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
You talked about building your team, and we get a lot of questions about editors, and I know how important editors are. What do you look for when you're hiring an editor?
Um, a lot of editors will do a sample edit for you, which is great. I highly recommend that. And sometimes I even like to plant certain mistakes in there to see if they'll catch it on that sample edit, which I know it sounds like a trap. It is, I guess. But you just want to make sure. And I talk to author friends too. If somebody I know and respect and trust has a great experience with someone, I know that I most likely will as well.
Hmm.
I will say, it's good to change it up too. I found a new editor for this last book, and I think it really helped me level up a little bit.
Hmm.
And she kind of pointed out some craft flaws that I've kind of gotten into a habit of doing. And so
Hmm.
it's really now it's like I'm flexing a new muscle because I'm like, oh wait, she told me to do. So even as I'm writing now,
Hmm.
like I've picked up new craft elements from that new editor. So I think
Hmm.
it's good to find a good editor and continue with that relationship, but also think about finding another editor to level
Hmm.
up once in a while.
Okay, that's a really good tip. I think people kind of find what they're comfortable with and stick with it.
Yeah, yeah. And that works for a lot of people too. And I
Hmm.
love my old editors too, but I just felt like this book needed something,
Hmm.
and so, it was good to push myself.
Good. This is a question we get frequently. Do you follow market trends or do you write what you're interested in regardless of popularity?
Mm. I pretty much write what I am interested in, regardless of popularity. Thankfully,
Hmm.
romantic comedy and sports romance have stayed very consistently popular. So, I'm not writing anything crazy. I have felt for some authors that are writing real dark suspense angst
Hmm.
books during this coronavirus time we're in, just because
Right.
I think they worry that readers aren't looking for that form of escape. But I know
Hmm.
there's still lots of readers that are. They love that genre, and that is their escape even if
Right.
it is dark and scary.
Hmm.
Um, so no, I don't really follow trends though. I will say sometimes I'll notice there's a lot of surprise pregnancy books right now. Like I was going to write this surprise pregnancy book like a year ago, and I felt like all my close author friends were writing surprise pregnancy books. I'm like, maybe I'll write another Harris Brother book instead. Like,
Right.
because I kind of jump back and forth between two series.
Uh-huh.
But for the most part, I've already set up my trope for my books in the previous book. So I kind of am just continuing in my worlds. So I
Right.
don't follow the trends too much.
Um, Now, you've talked a lot about different marketing techniques. You've talked about social media. What's the most cost-effective marketing technique with the highest return on investment that you've found? Or is there one?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably ads,
Hmm.
because, with a really good ad, you can see a nice return on investment. And so I think, because even if you're not well known or you don't have that fan base yet, or you don't have a newsletter built enough,
Hmm.
an ad can still hit a reader that would like
Hmm.
or your trope might trigger someone to try you. I mean, I try new authors all the time. I have no idea if they're popular or have a big following or not, and
Hmm.
it's kind of fun when you find out they don't, and you feel like you've found this hidden gem. So
Right.
I think Facebook ads and Amazon ads give you that in with anybody.
I think we do get a lot of questions, kind of follow-up questions about how much money you spend on these. And we talk a lot about you spend what you can afford. What did you, how did, when you started getting into advertising, kind of what was that process like for you?
It's hard. It's scary and it feels kind of like you could be throwing money away,
Mhm.
especially because ads are not easy to figure out. Like I have someone help me now because I'm just so overwhelmed by it and it's always changing. And so
Mhm.
it's really hard. It is great to know how to do them though. It's sort of one of those things that it's good to know how the sausage is made, you know,
Right.
so that you can control it a little bit. Um, but as far as how much I spend, it varies per book. And, if the book's doing well, I'll continue to spend. I
Mhm.
usually have a percentage that I like to spend of what I'm making per day. It
Okay.
varies from like 10% to sometimes up to 30,
Hmm.
depending on where I'm at in the release and how it's climbing and looking. And I
Hmm.
always say though, you can't chase a rank. So either you have it or you don't. Don't try to chase it up there
Hmm.
if you're not already up there a little bit, because oftentimes I feel like I'm just throwing money away when I do that. So,
Okay.
and just start modest and see what your sales dashboard does and keep an eye on it. I check it daily. So,
Hmm. You've used the word trope several times and we're getting some questions. What is a trope?
um, I wish there was a really smart, quick definition I knew, but a trope is the main theme of a story. So in romance, surprise pregnancy is a trope, roommates is a trope, enemies to lovers, best friends to lovers, virgin romance.
Mhm.
There's all sort bad boys kind of a trope, or I said doctor is a trope,
Mhm.
billionaire, millionaire, sports. Yeah, so just all those very popular themes that you see in romance novels, those are called tropes.
Good. Um, Romance is really competitive. How do you make your book stand out?
I keep hammering this, but like a great cover and a great blurb and consistent marketing and branding, so that people see a book and they know that's an Amy Daws book. Um, and I think just continuing to push yourself and continuing to release and stay at the top of people's minds, whether that's with new releases or just social media. Like I don't
Hmm.
want people to forget I'm here. I'm here.
Right.
I'm not releasing, but I'm here.
So
Also,
we've got, oh,
sales.
sorry, go ahead.
Sales are a big thing. Sorry, I just
Uh-huh.
wanted to add. I haven't really talked about sales, but
Yeah.
sales are a great way to, um, find new readers. And like I just had a book bub yesterday for one of my books, and
Hmm.
that's so exciting to see 20,000 downloads of one of your books
Hmm.
in one day. Like that's crazy. So that's 20,000 people that might read the next book. And then you kind of slowly grow your following. So sales, a really effective sale can be awesome to grow.
On that note, being in Kindle Unlimited, you have the opportunity for free giveaways or countdown deals. Do you use either of those?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I love BookBub because that's got such a huge following. So when
Hmm.
I got the email that they accepted me for a BookBub deal, then I go into KDP and I schedule my freebie sale. And that is awesome. Like it is all easy and it's there and you don't have to stress about, if it'll go live at the right time. And
Right.
so, yeah, that's so convenient. I don't do a ton of countdown deals. I really love freebies, even more than
Yeah.
99-cent deals because there's a viral potential with the freebie. I mean, think of
Hmm.
20,000 people. And when you think about a 99-cent book, you're only making about 35 cents per
Hmm.
book. Even if you sell 1,000, I mean, that's not great. That's not a huge money maker. So, but the
Right.
viral and the potential of 20,000 for, nothing and reading it. And if those people, if half of them or 10% of them even read into the next book at full price, that's a lot more money than the 99-cent deal. So I'm a big freebie advocate.
Okay, good. Good to know.
Yeah.
Um, so I think this is our last question, and so let's make it a really, really good one. I think we got a few questions about the sex scenes. How many sex scenes are too many? How do you make sure that it's descriptive enough to be steamy? Can you talk a little bit about that?
This is a great ending question. Um, I'm very big into every one of my sex scenes has to develop the relationship or has
Hmm.
to have some sort of development to the relationship, even if it's the first time or a one
Hmm.
night stand. That's the spark. That's the meet cute. That's like the very first moment. And then the next one is like they're going to establish a little bit more of a connection. And maybe
Hmm.
like I think maybe I'm around 5 sex scenes a book. I think that
Okay.
might be my spot, but I honestly don't pay attention. And some of my sex scenes are full descriptive and some are like you just see it start and then scene ends, you know?
Right.
So it just varies. And but every single one of them is establishing chemistry, progression in their relationship. Maybe they share something in their narrative that the reader didn't know yet, like, oh man, I'm falling for this person, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
there's so much that can be achieved in a sex scene besides just the act of sex, you know?
Right.
It's the development in the relationship and the thoughts and feelings going on
Hmm.
that make sex scenes so important in books.
Well, thank you for that.
You're
Um,
welcome.
all right, so we're actually at time. I want to thank everybody for joining us. I know that you, like I said, you asked a lot of really great questions today, and I hope we got through a lot of them. But a special thank you to Amy for taking the time and sharing such great information with us.
Thanks for having me. This was I could have done this for another hour. This was easy. So thank you.
Oh, good. I'll keep that in mind. Maybe we'll do it again.
Okay, sounds good.
All right. Well, happy publishing, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.